Hi guys, I'm Dibley from Dib's Shunting Yard. Have you ever wondered about this wonderful hobby of ours, where it's going to be in 40 or 50 years' time? I have, and if you'd like to hear my thoughts and opinions on it, stick around. So this hobby, I got into this hobby probably like many people of my generation in their childhood years, probably introduced from a member of family. In my case, it was from a granddad. He was very much into trains. His dad was a signalman, so he was around trains for most of his life. He did model engineering, 5-inch gauge and 3.5-inch gauge, live steam. And around either my 5th birthday or Christmas time when I was 5, he talked my parents into getting me a small Hornby little layout starter set. It was the Holden with Arnold Sands and Bestwood, McVitie's biscuits and a shell tanker or something like that. Might have had a guards van, I can't really remember. It was basic circle. And obviously, like many people, that lived on, got to come out the box, got set up on the table, put away again. And within a couple of months, thankfully, my parents decided to get a new table, and that meant I had the old dining table. That soon appeared with a little bit of hardboard, and then some extra bits of track got nailed to it, a couple of points, and obviously the scenery started to happen, stations and a little bit of a road and some houses and a hill and stuff like that. And then eventually my granddad built me a bigger L-shaped layout that was actually screwed to the wall and had legs that held it up, and the furniture could go underneath, so it could take a little bit more room in my bedroom. When we moved again, I was able to go up into the loft, had a little J-shaped layout up in part of the loft where we were. There was already some units there that could be converted. And then I tried a small dabble into N-gauge in my teenage years. And then obviously got into cars and girls, and that pretty well stopped the hobby until I was in my 30s. So it started to pick up in the 30s, started to collect a few bits, realised that the hobby was quite expensive for me then. I didn't have a lot of spare money, so it got shelved again. And then it was only a couple of years ago, just before COVID started, that I looked at the hobby once more and thought I could probably just about afford to do a tiny layout, which obviously you may know as Dib's Yard. And I'm well and truly back into the hobby. Now, my question about where is this hobby going to be in 40 or 50 years' time? Well, if those of us that are in the hobby now, my generation and older, were probably introduced to the hobby as children, that would stand that people in the hobby in 40 or 50 years' time kind of need to be introduced to the hobby now while they are children. Because it will be the people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s that have the disposable income and can probably put more effort and time into the hobby. Obviously that doesn't go for everyone, but I'm just working on the demographics of my local club. Most of the people are retirees. There are a couple of youngsters. I'm probably considered quite young at the age of 50, so it just goes to show the sort of demographics that the hobby has down here in the south coast. It might be a little bit different up north, where there is more exposure to trains, probably more interesting trains, so maybe youngsters do get into it a little bit more. But the issue I have with the hobby at the moment is to introduce children into the hobby. It's a little bit too expensive. Yes, my daughter has a little layout, it's a little round and round layout with a couple of points. Obviously entirely funded by myself and my wife, but there is no real way that she could save up for a new wagon with 3 or 4 weeks pocket money. Back in the 70s and the 80s, maybe I'm remembering with rose-coloured glasses, but I'm pretty sure about 4 weeks worth of saving would probably get me a little 5-plank wagon, a little Arnold Sands or something like that. Wanted to save up a little bit more, maybe for another 4 or 5 weeks, you might be able to get a little 040 Loco, and if you're really good at saving and maybe have a little bit of birthday money, you might be able to get a shunter or something else. I mean, I can remember for one of my birthdays, I'm pretty sure my grandparents it was who got me the Flying Scotsman, which I believe was about £25 or £28 at the time. So that was a lot of money. It was more than my parents could afford to get me for a birthday or Christmas present. But it was something that, was being those sort of things were bought for children of my era. But I'm thinking now, would I be able to buy a Flying Scotsman for Merriday? Not really, not at £200+. I'm really not going to be able to do that. And also, would I really want, to risk her dropping it? She is very careful. She probably wouldn't drop it, but I really wouldn't want to risk that. The models we had in our day were much more basic, and you could manhandle them without the risk of the valve gear falling to bits or ladders falling off or everything. They were a lot more basic casting, so it was easier for young, small hands, which are a bit more clumsy, to grab hold of and put on and off the layout. So with that in mind, that the hobby is probably a little bit expensive for most children to actually maintain without having birthdays and Christmases to get the bits and pieces, where, do you think that there are many young people getting into the hobby, and what do you think about how the hobby will stand in 40 or 50 years' time if we're not encouraging people into the hobby, or there is not the cost, the pricing that allows youngsters to get into the hobby? Do you think the hobby will just die off, or maybe it will become only for the elitists, only those like Pete Waterman with countless thousands of pounds to spend on a hobby? Or will it go back to maybe scratch building like it probably was in the 40s and 50s and early 60s, where there was less kits available, and people would build their own buildings and make do, and maybe we'll go to that. Maybe 3D printing will have taken off, so actually you'll just need to go and buy a chassis and you can 3D print your body and everything else you need. But obviously that doesn't fit for everyone, because not everyone wants to build them. Some people want ready to run. They don't want to paint stuff. So what do you think? Do you think I'm a million miles off the mark, that the hobby is going to die out in 40 or 50 years' time, or just become elitist? Or do you think that that there is enough young people coming into the hobby, and actually it will still be thriving at the point that I drop off this planet, and therefore myself and my generation will not be buying models anymore, or be too old to get up into the loft, or too cold to get into the garage or their shed to do it? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm wrong? Or have you got even a different opinion which is just as doom and gloomy? Let me know. I'd love to hear. I'd like to see a discussion on it. So anyway, I'm Dibley for Dib Shunting Yards, and thank you. If you've got to the end of this video, thank you very much for watching.